We'll figure it out. So our panel is Practical Foundations for Success in Texas. My name is Erin McKelvey. I'm the President and CEO of the European American Chamber of Commerce, Texas. And this is a big state. So I have the pleasure of having a membership organization with very talented professionals across the state of Texas. Our business is our mission, I should say, is to accelerate and help businesses come together to learn, to grow, to bring practical information. We are non-political, non-governmental, nonprofit, and I've been doing this job for a long time in different capacities and over different time periods, and it's just, if you're in nonprofit, you better love what you're doing. It really is it's just learning and having the pleasure of seeing so many companies with so many incredible ideas. That's a really amazing position to be in, especially in the 8th largest economy in the world. And that being said, I know some of you, how many of you just stepped into Texas, if any, for the first time? Okay, welcome. And have you seen JR? Have you seen a lot of cowboy hats, I don't think you've seen any cows yet, but your expectations of Texas, I'm sure, will be shattered, or maybe, we have all of those things. It is an amazing state with amazing opportunities, amazing cities, including both the 4th and 5th largest metropolitan areas in the United States, and soon to be 3rd and 4th. So this is where the growth is. So what we're going to focus on, and there are a lot of Slovaks and Czechs in Texas. There are about 200,000 people in Texas with Slovak and Czech heritage. That's a lot. A lot of people came here in the 1800s to bring their families and have opportunities, and people are still coming. So I'm going to get started today with Super Dave. I'm not doing bios because you all have access to those online, and his name is Super Dave for a reason. You don't take that name lightly, and so I'm sure he has to live up to it every day, and he does. I can tell you he does. So Dave, tell me about Texas. Tell our audience about Texas, and how it's different, how it's amazing, and what it means for companies coming here rather than going to the East Coast or the West Coast or wherever. We have the slides. Yay. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Erin. You do a phenomenal job of connecting people, European companies, as they come in. I am Super Dave Quinn. I'm an economic developer. And my job is to help companies that are building or relocating to Texas to connect with those resources. In Texas, we have dedicated professionals at the local level whose job it is to help companies grow and expand their business, and that helps the community grow their economy. And so my job is to connect inbound companies looking for those resources to help you connect. Because Erin said, Texas is a really big state. You're in Austin, but there are dozens of cities around Austin that really people think of as Austin. So you might be in Buda, you might be in Kyle, you might be in Bastrop. That's really the Austin region, and each of these cities give you their own resources, right? They have their own personalities, they have their own things that they're looking for. So you can be in Austin, but not necessarily be in Austin. So that gets really tricky to figure out when you're talking about a city or state as big as Texas. That's my job. And so I'm the founding partner of Texas Economic Development Connection. It's a free resource. You can connect through our platform, and we connect you with local economic developers at no cost to the business because the communities pay us to be that resource. You can see here the communities that we represent across Texas. I'm going to move through these really quick so we can get to the real value of the presentation here. I think we all know Texas is top in business for a reason. Here are some of the stats, and just to kind of give you some idea of why we're so good and why so many people are coming here. And what we're seeing is that the economy as a whole, especially since COVID, has been in shaky ground. so to speak. What people are finding is that if you're going to go through a storm, you want to weather it in a harbor that's pretty safe. Texas is that harbor. We're seeing more and more people come, not only on the business side, but on the talent attraction side. So we're having people move in. In Collin County, where I live, we have 93 people a day moving into the county. That's just one county every day, over and over and over again. So companies are coming because that talent is coming as well. Then that also presents a lot of opportunities because those people need, they have needs and things that they need to do. And so Texas, from an economy standpoint, you can see is driving a lot of economic opportunity here in the States. Just another thing, again, it's not me just up here saying this, it's not bragging. As Texas, we say it's not bragging if it's true, and it's true. The numbers prove it out. So you can kind of see what's going on there. From an international trade standpoint, we do international really well. And one of the reasons is, from Texas, you can serve both the East and the West Coast. You don't have to choose one or the other. A lot of times companies might come in and they choose the East Coast because it's easier to get to the European countries, but then they have a really hard time meeting their West Coast opportunities. So in Texas, it allows you that opportunity to do both, and we serve those markets really well. Again, we have several ports of entry. You can see there the state infrastructure, the commitment to state infrastructure continues to grow as well. So it's not we're done, this is what you get. We're continuing to reinvest in the state to make sure you can move goods in and out effectively. Again, back to the talent pipeline, if you're looking for people who can help your business grow, we all know that it's the people in your business that make it grow. And so those people are coming, we can help you connect to that talent pipeline through all of our different workforce initiatives. There again, when we talk about, well, really how big is Texas? Is it really that big? There's over 1,200 cities or communities in the state of Texas. Each one has its own personality, each one has its own way of doing things. And in Texas, the economic development system is built to start at the local level and work its way up. So you want to connect with your local economic developer. That person will then take your hand and walk you up the opportunities that are available at the state, regional, and county levels. But that's your first start. That's my job, is to connect you with that local economic developer. So there you go. That's how you can connect to me. Make it really simple. We can connect online or LinkedIn, and then I can answer questions when we get to the next part. It's all right.
We will have a Q&A at the end for anyone who has some questions. And it's really, really important, and I do this a lot, and we do a lot of webinars. We work with companies all over Europe through the Enterprise Europe Network, which we are a partner of in Texas. We're the only partner with the European Commission and the Enterprise Europe Network. And what we find is that most companies who try to come to Texas are very ill prepared. And not only that, but they haven't even found out how to export from their own country in Europe. It is generally a very poor decision just to say, oh, we have a great product and we're going to the United States. It takes a lot of work, a lot of background work, and working with partners, a lot of resources in Europe for companies and SMEs. And I think that's one of the most important things to say. You may have a really amazing product, and I just talked to someone who said the same thing. We see the products are, and the innovation is incredible, but the companies are ill prepared. So, and a lot of companies really don't understand what it means legally and immigration-wise. These are two very important things, and cross-border accounting, taxation, all of these things. Figure that out in advance before you run off, to say we're going to Texas. That's great, but that's why we're here, to provide those resources. And our next resource is John Sigety. John is with Platt Richmond PLLC. He has a great background in working with international companies and sports tech as well. And I'll pass it over to John to give you guys some pointers on where to begin.
Okay. All right, yeah, so that's my big head there. My name is John Sigety. I'm an attorney with Platt Richmond. We're based in Dallas. I live in Frisco, which is another great hub of technology and headquarters that you should get to know. And if anybody's interested in talking about that afterwards, please come see me. My background, I actually have a little bit of background with Slovakia. 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago, me and my son, he's a soccer player, a young soccer player, football for those in Slovakia. We went to Slovakia, and he played against some youth teams while we were there. We stayed in Subava, we went to Bratislava, we went to Trnava, several different cities, playing against some Division I and Division II youth academies. So I loved my time there. I want to go back. After I came here, I got in touch with Martin here, and since that time, I've helped a few different companies register to do business here in the United States. And so we can talk a little bit about the complexities and technicalities from a very high bird's eye view of how you start doing business here in the United States and in Texas. Okay, the first thing to remember when you're dealing, and this is all very general, but the first thing to remember when you're starting to do business in the United States is that you are dealing with two sets of laws. You're dealing with federal law and you're dealing with state law. That is because we are a federal system, and there's different states that have their own separate different types of laws. For federal law, you're dealing with business income tax and self-employment tax. And in state law, you're dealing with state income tax. You're dealing with different types of taxes that way. Now here, if you are looking to do business in Texas, if you're looking to come to Texas, we don't have a business income tax for businesses that are starting out here in Texas. And so that's one of the big incentives for people who are looking to come do business here in Texas. What we do have is a franchise tax. And the franchise tax is a little different because it's not based on your profits. It's not based on profit loss, that type of thing. It's based on the gross revenue you come in. And most companies who are just starting off are not paying a franchise tax in Texas because there is a threshold for that. And so a lot of companies who are just starting off don't necessarily meet that threshold. And so that's one of the incentives for doing business in Texas. But again, remember, you're dealing with two sets of laws when you come to the United States. I won't get into all of this because it takes a long time, but you have the slides. You can talk to me about it afterwards. But there are different types of business entities that you can form when you come here. And the way that we typically do this is when we're bringing a business in is you start a new business here that is maybe wholly owned by your business in Slovakia. And now I have dealt with someone who they were getting a grant from the Slovakian government, and that grant was dependent on it being a Slovakian company, so they couldn't start a business here in Texas. So what we did was we just registered that Slovakian business to do business here in the United States. But there are different types of business entities that you can look at when you come here. There's the most popular, and I'm sure a lot of you are very familiar with it, is the LLC, the Limited Liability Company. The pros of that, as you can see up there, is the flexibility to choose any business tax structure. You can choose C Corp or S Corp. We can talk more about that later. It's very flexible, and there's protection against liability for all owners, including single owners. And there's no federal corporate taxes because it's a state. It's created on the state level. And most states in the Union, in the United States, you can set up an LLC. Cons, obviously, are it's not recognized outside the United States. It's an entity structure that is not recognized outside the United States. There are costs to establish and maintain it. It's not perpetual, so you have to continually renew it if you want to continue doing business. And in Texas, it is subject to a franchise tax. But it's commonly used for anything. So a lot of businesses that come here to Texas, that come to the United States, start off with the LLC. Partnership and LLP is obviously, it's easy, it's inexpensive, and a lot of times you're defaulting to a partnership or LLP if you're not specifically registering an entity. However, you are subject to personal liability. It's a little more dangerous in that sense, and then of course there's the corporation, which is the most common one. A lot of people think about it's the Inc. that you see at the end of the company, and sole proprietorships as well. Now, so each of these are subject to different types of taxes that you can that come with the entity or that are default from the entity or that you can elect. So we'll talk about that next. So there are different types of tax structures when you're doing business in the United States. And again, this is the federal type. This is the federal type of taxes. This is what you're paying to the United States government rather than to the Texas or the state government. An S Corp allows for, well, let's start with the C Corp. The C Corp is just, typically it's the default type of taxation. And the negative for a C Corp is double taxation. You're being taxed at the level of the income that the company is bringing in, and then also any distributions, and then the individual owners of the corporation are being taxed through distributions, through sales, the income you make that way. Now, if you elect an S Corp, you are being taxed only once. It's not taxed at the entity level. It's being taxed when you are when the owners of the company take distributions, sell a portion, that type of thing. So it's only being taxed once in that sense. But there are restrictions on that. It's not recognized outside the United States, no more than 100 shareholders in your company. So if you go above that threshold of 100 shareholders, then you don't have the S Corp option. And obviously there are exceptions to all of this. There are different types of things, but again, just a general overview. And this is something that you can elect. You can elect it as an LLC or as a corporation. This is something that you elect later on or after you file for registration with your entity. Let's see. Yeah. So obviously the S Corp is commonly used more when it's a sole proprietorship or family-owned smaller business. With the C Corp, foreign ownership is permitted. So that's a big option for if the ownership is Slovakian, if they're Slovakian citizens, reinvestment of profits, and current investors. So, okay, so that's kind of the business entities, and I know I'm going fast. Please stop me if you want to talk afterwards. I also do intellectual property. One thing that I love to focus on is trademark registration. Okay, so can a foreign company register a trademark in the United States? No. Yes. I learned a little bit there. But foreign entities must be represented by a U.S. licensed attorney, and that's as of August 2019. A foreign trademark application, if it was registered in another country, you can file that application in advance of entering the U.S. market. You have 5 years for the registration to prove that the mark is being used in commerce in the United States. And if I remember correctly, the date that you began to use that trademark can be backdated if you can show that it was registered in the other country. And so that happens a lot. A new trademark application, if there's no foreign trademark registration, there's two types of registration you can do. If your trademark is already in use, which it seems like a lot of people here already have it in use, you have to show that it's being used in commerce in the United States. So that's 1A, that's the first type of application. Or if there's a future intent to use it, you can file an intent to use application, which we can do as well. The hang up there is that you have to show that you intend to use it within 6 months, and then you have to file a statement of use within 6 months. Now, the caveat there is that you can file extensions anywhere up to every 6 months, anywhere up to 6 times. You can also register your trademark in just one state. I don't think that that's going to be the case for a lot of you, because a lot of you are going to be using your trademarks across state lines in multiple states in the United States, right? For federal protection, so again, federal law, state law. There's two different types of law. For federal law, it's a longer process to register, but you get that protection for your trademark throughout the entire United States. In a state like in Texas, it's quicker and cheaper, but it only offers protection in that state. And I mean, this is just some general technical about how you do it. this is something that I, as a United States attorney, can help with. It's done through the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. My office also does patents as well, and copyrights, if that's what you guys are looking for. I know there's a lot of technical companies out there. And you file it through the trademark application system. You wait, because that's what you do when you register in the United States. You wait for a bit, and you maintain your trademark. But if you register and you eventually show that you're using it, then you get the protection you need. So I know that's a lot. I know I talked pretty quickly, but please seek me out, and we'll have some questions afterwards. Let me see if there's one.
Okay, thank you, John. As John was saying, patents and trademarks and intellectual property, really this is one of the very most important things. All of you are brilliant people, we know. And please don't go around talking about everything you're doing if you have patents in process, or if you're only patented in Europe and you're not patented here. It's not the same thing, and it's not the same process. So it's incredibly important before you come into the United States with your intellectual property, or anywhere else in the world for that matter, be sure that your intellectual property attorneys are speaking and working with attorneys in the United States, because it doesn't work just to work with Europe. You have to do both. I'll say that is, don't say we didn't tell you so. Okay, next up, I've got Martin Valko. Martin is with Chavez and Valko LLP. He is a managing partner and has worked many years in immigration law. Martin is also the honorary consul of Slovakia and in Dallas, and serves the Slovak community probably across Texas in many ways, and has for quite some time. So he not only works but serves the community. I'd like to thank Martin and let you talk about some immigration issues.
Yeah, thank you, Erin, Dave, John, another big head. There are, I think, 2 Slovaks on the stage right now. As we spoke with John, there is a citizenship through descent that we've introduced a few years ago in Slovakia, and it may be that you may be Slovak.
Yeah, so my last name, as you know right now, is Sigety, and that's, from what I understand, is a Hungarian last name, but my father's birth last name, he was adopted by Sigety, is Wallach, so W-A-L-L-A-C-H, Wallach, which, the records that we can trace back, his ancestors came to New York in the early 1900s, late 1800s, but the records that we can trace back to the 1800s, they say Austro-Hungarian Empire, they say Austria. So, all the names are very Czech, Slovakian, and from what we can tell, it's, I have some ancestry from Slovakia or the Czech region, and they've, since I went over to Slovakia, kind of started looking at it more, and it's very interesting. I felt very much of a connection to, even though I don't speak the language, even though I'm fully American, it's very cool to be amongst all of you and know that, hey, maybe somewhere we're related. So
we'll look into it. We'll make you a Slovak citizen. But I'm extremely proud to be here in Texas, and thank you for the invitation. I landed here 34 years ago from Slovakia as an exchange student. So vítajte všetci zo Slovenska. Fully Slovak, speaking Slovak, raising kids in Slovak. But I'm very proud of what Slovak Pro has done with Andrea in place as running the local chapter Valko for the last 6 or 7 years, running it nationally, and just the expansion is incredible. And when we're talking to our Czech friends, that they have a government-run organizations, that there is some competition now, because the tenacity of the Slovak Pro, the professionals involved, is incredible. So I'm really, really, really happy about it. But when I got here, I finished school. Being an immigrant, I slowly got into this field, which is extremely important for anybody coming over, whether it's foreign students, founders, companies, again, each slide is continuing legal education, 1 hour at least, just like with LLCs, very, very detail oriented, and that's why we have consultations, have meetings with companies, try to work on the strategy and what is the right path. Working with individuals and organizations and chambers, people like David, Super Dave, corporate attorneys is extremely important because it basically sets the tone of your short-term strategy, long-term strategy, and all that is important. Getting in your accountant, your tax attorney, super, super important. My practice, I've practiced a couple of decades now, more than 20 years doing immigration, and I manage one of our offices in North Texas. Practice focuses on all levels of immigration, family immigration, deportation, defense, and appellate work, and I run the employment-based business investment section, which is very important in bringing businesses into the U.S. Represented companies from moms and pops, startups, Slovak startups, Fortune companies, some of the companies you've seen on the slides. I represent currently or have represented. I think I have some clients here in the room as well. Thank you for being here. But basically, there are two paths. The first path is the non-immigrant, the temporary path. The other one is permanent. And so generally speaking, you want to get here on the temporary non-immigrant path. And there are a couple of slides that I've had, really the most useful. The first one it's not a work visa, but majority of you, whether you're from Slovakia or any other country, you come here through a visitor's visa for business or pleasure, or on ESTA if your country is an ESTA country, which is a visa waiver country, where you just go online, apply for a 2-year registration, pay a minimal fee, and that allows you to enter on business or pleasure when you come to the U.S. And most of you that I've spoken with, most of the people that we work with, that's your recon type. When you come to the U.S., you want to kind of scope the area, do your market research, talk to Dave, talk to Erin, talk to John. And when I have consultations with clients, that's basically what we tell them, right? We want to get these people in the room, especially corporate tax, and then determine, okay, what are we doing? Who's the sponsor? Who's the investor? Is it a company? Are individuals being the individual sponsors? Is it a larger company? Are we looking to transfer between different entities? Is it an individual? Is it a founder who is, I call it a talent visa that I'll show in a second, O1 extraordinary ability? What's the long-term plan? Is it, are you seeking permanent residence, right? Do you want to get a green card? Not the gold green card or gold card that our president recently introduced for $5 million, but you want to know the plan. What is it? And so, this is something that is utilized as step number one, where you come to the country. You are limited to 90 days on ESTA or max 6 months on your B1, B2. And one thing that I want to stress, first of all, immigration is a federal practice, unlike corporate, family, criminal. It's all state-based. So we represent clients in every state, since it's federal, obviously across the world. One thing that I can't stress enough is to be honest when you are coming through Customs and Border Protection at the airport. The people you're dealing are not the nicest folk when you are coming through Customs. They have seconds to make a determination if you're coming in or if you're going to be passed to secondary screening. If it's secondary, not so pleasant. There could be a couple of hours, so your trip and travel could be interrupted. you truly want to be honest, answer the questions, don't muddy the waters. Last thing you want to know is you got to get hit with misrepresentation or fraud, which will require a waiver. If you get hit with that, you may be done as far as lawful permanent residence green card is concerned. So I can't stress it enough. When they tell me, well, I really didn't say that, I'm not going to say this, and I'm going to do this. You know, you're coming in on SXSW or B1, B2, you want to have itinerary, you want to have a return ticket, you want to know exactly what you're going to be doing, you want to be, it's kind of like giving a 60-second pitch, same thing, you know, diplomatic, courteous, nice, smile, so that officer can just let you in and you go on about your business. You also don't want to come in for B1 or SXSW and max out and on the 89th day leave and go wash your clothes back home and come back in 3 days later because they see it in the record, and you'll probably do it once or twice and then you got to get returned home and you'll be asked to apply for the proper visa, whatever you may be doing. So sometimes we have employees of foreign companies that are coming over either for training, for equipment installation. Those are allowed to come in on a B1, B2, typical on B1, and they get paid from home. They cannot get paid here in the U.S. What's that? Treaty investor. So really the most common is your investor's visa, E2. There's also one, E1, which we don't have, because it's based on a treaty between the U.S. and the treaty country. So Slovakia is a treaty country with E2 for the treaty investor's visa, whether it's institution or it's an individual investor. Fairly easy to do, prepare, and get the people in. We work with some notable Slovak institutions that brought in managers, essential employees under the E2, when the E2, the company is the sponsor, or then if you are the investor, individual investor, then you have to meet all the requirements. We'll give you the slide. I think we can give it to people because there's just way too much stuff to go through. But just generally, if it's an E2, the treaty country has to be at least 50% negative control owner of the U.S. company. And then the employees or the investors coming from abroad, from Slovakia, they have to be, speaking of Slovakia, they have to be Slovak nationals, right? Now, if a Slovak national has a spouse who is from Ukraine or other country where there is no E2 treaty, then they can come in as a spouse of that person. Real quick, I mean, you can look at the basically the details. So spouses come in, spouses are immediately employment authorized, the kids go to school for up to age of 21. The negative here is that you do not, it's not a kind of a natural direct way into a permanent residence green card, but there may be some other ways around it. The other common one is for larger companies, so like some Fortune companies that we work with, or even some bigger Slovak companies, bring people on L, intra-company transferee. L1 is a manager, executive. L1B is a specialized knowledge worker, so you got to have 2 entities at least. Person coming from abroad has to have been working for at least 1 year of the last 3 prior to admission. And that's a really quick way. You don't have to kind of put in the capital on the E2 where you have the money. It has to be real and operating. Money has to be at risk, and it's catch 22. People are saying, well, I'm going to invest $100,000, $150,000. I don't have a visa yet. I was like, well, that's the name of the game. So you have to have a skin in the game. With L, not so much, but with L, you really have to show that the company, if it's a new office, so you get it for 1 year, within a year, you have to scale it quite a bit, and that really doesn't happen much. So if I have a treaty country like Slovakia, I want to come in on an E2, maybe have the setup of the intra-company transferee where it's the same control and share of the US and the foreign company, because the difference between the E and L is that L directly, if you're an L1A manager and executive, leads to a green card, like if you keep the same structure. So sometimes we set up the E2, the same control as the ownership as the foreign country that continues to operate, and then later we'll get into the green card, because typically when people get here, especially on the L1, they're looking to become lawful permanent residents, to obtain a green card without paying $5 million individually. Same thing, spouse works, is employment authorized, children can go to school for up to age of 21, and then you can look at the some other details. Can I get back to one more? I don't know what I did. Oh, there we go. Yep, well. This last one, extraordinary ability. Sorry.
So you have to click through. Let me do this quickly here.
So yeah, can you just tap it? There we go. And this is one that this is the one that I just added, talent, extraordinary ability. Classification. The beauty of this is that you can come in, and a lot of founders, it opened up, it relaxed more in the STEM fields. So you still have to show, I guess most of you have not won a Nobel Prize, so you have to go in with one of the three of what I'm listing. So, I'm sorry, you won the Nobel Prize?
Almost.
Almost, okay, so, all right, we'll talk later. It's going to be a pretty easy case.
That only works in horseshoes.
Yep.
Well, you was right.
Okay. And so that's you know, a really nice way of coming in as an employee for an employer, coming in as an agent. If you have an agent or an agent for a foreign employer, and now there's been a more kind of relaxing of the rules where the foreign national can set up an LLC, for example, John. And they are the owner of the company, but also sponsoring themselves as a beneficiary. And it's, you know, again, athletics, sciences, arts, anything you can think of. Just work with a Slovak movie star that we got the 01B for movies and motion pictures approved. And it's just a great way of getting your foot in the door. I mean, work with tattoo artists, and you name it, right? Scientists, athletes, et cetera. So really good way of doing this, and then you can get in there. Now the beauty of this one, that I typically use that if we don't have just a slam dunk case, that I'd like to use this as a non-immigrant temporary visa to test the waters with USCIS, to see what are they thinking. You know, is this person of international and national acclaim? Is it somebody that kind of rises to that 5-10% level in their field? And if I don't get much pushback, then later we can go for permanent residence for a green card. So, anyways, there are a couple of others, not too many options when it comes to immigrating to the U.S., but this is the temporary way, and then I've mentioned some permanent ways. So, anyways, if you have any questions.
Thank you. Martin, John, Super Dave. Now we can open it up to some questions. I think we have a little time left. And there will be a test on everything that Martin just said. Anyone passes it, you get free immigration. Do you have any questions?
I have a question. Somebody needs immigration
Okay, sure.
sense.
Thank you.
Thomas here. Question for all of you. There was a significant administration change happening the last 2 months. What are the opportunities and risks with the sort of new structure of the U.S. federal government?
I guess.
Good luck.
Yeah. You know, I think that the one thing that you can expect, you know, there's a lot of uncertainty, obviously, and I think that you can kind of, I think one thing that Slovakia and the rest of Europe can kind of look at is how is the administration dealing with our closer ally, with our closer neighbors, Canada, Mexico, and maybe kind of parse out how that may apply later on. I think the one thing that you can expect is some uncertainty, but also, you know, I think there is some certainty in that, you know, we're going to say tariffs, and then we're going to pull back to some degree. We're going to say one thing, and then perhaps there's some concessions, and then pull back. I think at the end of the day, there won't be, if tariffs are the question, then, you know, I think that significant tariffs are less likely than a lot of people might say, but that's just my personal opinion. I'm not basing that on anything specifically.
So I have been suffering a whiplash effect since January 20th, since the president took office, because he has taken so many executive actions and so many different policies on immigration that it's really difficult to keep up with. So when I get a call from CBS News or Fox, or I have to tell them, give me a couple of hours just to kind of scan through it, because it's just so much of it, and you don't know what it's just a kind of a shock effect, right? It's just gonna bomb. You just throw some. He's known to kind of throw grenades and see what happens, but it is in terms of people here in the room. I think it's going to be beneficial on the immigration side, because there was some talk about granting permanent residence, i.e. green cards to graduates. Makes sense. You know, when you have 480,000 green cards given every year, and you have categories, family and business, not if you're married to U.S. citizens, you're an immediate relative, so you are not waiting in the proverbial line, get in line, and some lines are 8 years, 18, 20, 23. Indian nationals with an H-1B visa are currently waiting 12, 13 years, and it's going to get worse and worse because there's a cap, there's a percentual cap on it, and so even national interest waivers now, you know, certain categories have that cap, and it's not a smart policy to kind of to send people that you've educated and trained somewhere else, to Canada, to UK and somewhere else. It's insane. So we are hearing there may be some more bans coming, like we've had 2017 a Muslim ban from certain countries. So we're advising clients watch for travel, international travel. I had a client back in 2017. When you probably heard of about 20 people got stuck at the DFW International Airport when the ban against the Muslim countries were signed. And so my client was on her flight from Dubai when the ban went into effect. Her visa was canceled. She landed in Dallas. And so we were negotiating with ICE and the mayor of Dallas, and for like 3 days for the release of them, which was just made absolutely no sense, right? You revoke visas of those that are coming from certain countries, and this was a 67-year-old lady. So I guess stay tuned. People that are here, people that are founders, people that are going to be contributing, hence $5 million green card. I mean, the gold card, right? That's what they want, the administration wants. I gave a presentation to a contractors association, and you are going to get a lot of I-9 audits, a lot of ICE raids, right? Because if you're not an E-Verify mandatory state, you're able to onboard people through paper-based employee compliance, I-9 compliance, and all of a sudden ICE will knock on the door and they will fine, depending on the industry, construction, probably 40 to 50% of people working for construction companies are undocumented. I mean, they have papers, they're fictitious. The employer had done all they had to do, so they're not violating any laws, but eventually they will get picked up. So there's going to be a lot of attrition. People will be leaving. They're already leaving because they're afraid. There's fear. My company, I also own like a little software company. We built an app where user, when they press the red button, they tell the attorney the GPS location. We can listen to the audio that gets uploaded to the cloud, so we can act immediately. We know, is ICE there? Are they dealing with police? So we can act immediately. So we did that in 2018 when Trump was deporting everybody. So it's called Low Pilot Guardian, everybody.
Question?
Thank you all for a great panel. But I wanted to ask about doing business in Texas. So I guess it's directed to Erin and Dave. I saw that the corporate rate, or tax rate in Texas, 21%. It's, I think, similar to Slovakia. but there's also no income tax, business income tax. There might be more questions like this that come up to you. So what does it actually take, and how much does it cost to run a business in Texas? And maybe use an example of a small software company, or like what should you expect coming here? I'm not saying like how much exactly taxes you're going to be paying, but how does it compare to other states, and why Texas? Because we're here to celebrate.
So as John said, there's two different, there's a federal level and a state level. If you're going to California, New York, so we have federal taxes across the board for companies and employees, and then you have your state level, such as an income tax, and most states have an income tax. That's a big difference, and I'm just giving, John's really the one to answer your question. I'm just going to say that, I worked in California, and it was a lot more money coming out of my paycheck there. At the end of the day, I think I paid an extra $12,000 or something dollars. And Texas doesn't have that. So that's one of the reasons that a lot of the workforce here is coming here and is such a great, it's a great state to do business. And that's one of the main reasons. But taxation, we're not tax advisors. Please consult your tax advisor.
Yeah, so it's going to sound like I'm going to give you a very political answer, which it really depends. I don't want to say from the stage, it really depends. How do you set your business up? What are you making? How are you selling it? Who are you selling it to? Where is it coming? Our job is to connect you with professional people like this that can answer that question. And then once you have the answer, then I'll tell you where you should be doing that in Texas. But for that, I would really recommend not guessing at it. It really does depend on so many different factors. I could do 10 different examples, and none of them will match what you're looking for. So.
Yeah, and when you're hiring a lawyer in Texas, a lot of times you will also you'll want to consult an accountant as well. And with regard to the franchise, the franchise tax that I was talking about in Texas. I was looking through my notes, and the franchise tax threshold for Texas in 2024 and 2025 is about 2.5 million to 2,470,000. So if your gross receipts are not over that amount, you're not paying any franchise tax. You're still paying the federal tax, but the franchise tax is there. And don't quote me on that. I have to verify if that's still the case, but. When I last checked, that was the threshold, and so, and even if you're, even if you're going over that, it's still a marginal increase based on your what you're earning. So, does that answer your question?
No, because you did have the question, or it answered one half of it. The Europeans love to give two-part questions. The French give 3 or 4, and I've never figured out how they even keep that straight. But the question also was, how much does it cost to start a business here? It's very inexpensive to incorporate a business in Texas. Hundreds of dollars, no big deal. Where the expense comes in that people don't understand, there's all of these different levels that we've talked about today, whether it's, intellectual property, taxation, and as I said when we started, it's we have tax professionals who work with different types of companies, whether it's manufacturing or family-owned, multinationals, all different things. And one thing that I learned a couple years ago that surprised me was one of my members said, by the time these companies get to the United States and start a business, they've already cost themselves money, because if we know before they start the business in the United States, we can save them a lot of money. And most people run in and start a company without having that advice before they begin the company. So I think that's important. But when the cost of starting a business here, how many employees are you looking for, what level, human resources, there's recruiting. Recruiting is not cheap, and what people are paying for employees here is much higher than in Europe, and it's quite a shock to find out that you're going to be paying an employee or a sales manager or a VP in the United States as much or more than you're paying the president of the company in Europe.
I think that's a lot of companies that I deal with don't understand that part of it. The business cost of sales, doing business development, hiring that person and getting a staff to get you started is maybe not what they expected when they come in. And also on the tax side, you also have property tax, so it depends on what equipment you have, if you have an office, where that office is located. Again, there's lots of different factors there. It makes it really tough to answer generally what that cost is.
And another cost that just came to mind as well is insurance as well. A lot of times, I mean, I don't know how it is in every European country, but you know, our insurance rates are very high, and as you know, insurance, health insurance is tied to employment here, especially. I mean, depends on how many people you're employing, but that's why you need to connect with someone as well who can help you with payroll, with because there's a lot of specialized companies out there, and that's something we deal with. That we refer people to as well is, you know, what amount needs to be taken out of paychecks that goes to insurance or to Social Security, to Medicaid, Medicare, that kind of stuff.
That's all federal.
Yes, that's all federal, but it's also that's all the payroll situation. So it's I wish I could say it wasn't complicated, but it's complicated.
So very easy to start a company. Then, on the other hand, it is a lot of work, and you have to have an expectation that it's going to take some time, and put pieces in place slowly and carefully with the right environment, connections, and to people that you work with through something like a Chamber of Commerce, because we know the people that we work with, we know our members, and we refer, right? So it is kind of an umbrella, a little bit of a safety net to make sure you're connecting with professionals that we know, and that you're being guided, and not just thrown around to another guy that somebody knows or another person that somebody knows. And that can save you a lot of time in the long run.
Real quick on immigration. So there are some classifications that do not require any startup, like E2, the investor's visa will, right? It's got to be substantial depending on what type of business it is and what will the seed require to be more than marginal within 5 years. So with an E2, brand new E2 business, which is a treaty investors, you have to show that in 5 years the business will be more than marginal. Now, if you are an O1, extraordinary ability alien, and you have a smaller business, obviously considering all what they had said, that's in addition to that. But like L or O, they will not require you to have, but E, for example, the investor's visa will. And so if you're investing $100,000 and you could cost, the attorney cost, all of that is part of the investment, you're gonna have to show that probably 100% of it is yours, sourced directly to you. I have a client who is right now investing into a $25 million project, and he's putting $2.5 million of his own money. So it's percentage-wise much smaller because it's allowed. It's much larger investment. So, but 2.5 is substantial. But if it's $100,000 requirement, then getting close to 100% of that is required in addition to everything else.
I think our time is up. Yeah, ready to move us on. I want to go ahead. Thank everyone.
Space for one more question.
Sure, go ahead.
Let's take it sharp.
Thank you very much. My question is mostly about starting a business here in Texas and manufacturing. If there are some kind of, let's say, funds and grants for starting a business or establishing production here, because I know that in some places we are mostly in the, let's say, RV manufacturing and prefab houses. If it is something similar here, or like in Indiana, I know that there is a strong market for that and strong manufacturers, and the Texas is promising for a lot of, as I heard, Tesla and a lot of other manufacturers. If there is any kind of this stimulus for a company.
Yeah, that's a great question. So again, the system in Texas, the state allocated, they created a way for communities to adopt a sales tax, and those sales tax funds can be used for manufacturing. The question is where, and then each community gets to decide how much they want to focus on and how much they're willing to do that. So it sort of depends on what you're manufacturing, how many jobs is it going to create, what's the capital investment that you need. But you're going to have conversations with an economic developer in every community. Or you start at a region or state level like Texas Economic Development Connection, you tell us what you're looking for, we send it out to our partners, and it gives you a place to start, and you get some idea of what investment different cities. So Frisco, for example, small manufacturer, they're not interested. You're going to get $0. You move out 30 miles and you go to Van Alstyne or Melissa, maybe they give you $2 million based on the project. So it really depends on the project and having conversations with each economic developer. The other question is, if it's a startup, that's a little harder. But if you're manufacturing somewhere else and you're starting a new place in Texas, now we're interested, right? Because you've got proven history. You're not just have an idea, I think this will work. We are using public funds, so innovation, we love to say innovation. We don't necessarily like to fail. And so we like for you to have 2 or 3 years of doing this beforehand, and then communities, it makes it a little easier for them to invest in you. But again, the answer is, it depends. But every city, there is the opportunity. You just have to talk to the economic developer and see where you fit on their willingness to fund that type of project. Thank you guys, appreciate it. Welcome to Texas.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Next question.